didn't realize the window was open until after I went live. Also, every cat is in here. Every single cat. I don't know how this is gonna go. I've never tried to go live with Pond and the kittens in the same room. So should be interesting. That'll be fun. Spike was in my seat up until like a minute ago. So yeah. And now that I've managed to get Spike out of my seat, he's now eyeballing Pond's seat, and Pond is still in it. So I'm not super sure how that's gonna go. And I also have not known them to stay for 2 hours in the same room. So they could try and escape later and cause a ruckus. If they do, I apologize. He's still staring at her like he's gonna jump. I'm really worried he is. Yes. I don't know. They've never just all been in here. Nancy, I'm not too worried about. Nancy will find a spot. Nancy will curl up under the futon. But Spike's liable to cause some problems. Especially with Pond. Spike annoys the shit out of Pond. So, fun stuff. Alright. We don't have a whole lot. We have kind of a short chapter and kind of like an average chapter with some pictures in it. And then afterward, for the video game stream, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it now, and I'm going to talk about it at the end, just in case we have a different crowd in each. I got a new game that sounds interesting to me. Dave is really interested in it, and he purchased it with the intention of me playing it on stream. Really wants me to play it for stream. To know just how excited he is about it. We already had it on Xbox. He purchased it for the Switch also, just so I would stream it without having to move the equipment. He's very interested in me playing it. You can look it up. It's called Hellblade. And it has a lot of Norse mythology in it. However, it was made with psychoanalysts and like mental health experts, and it replicates some response patterns and mental health problems. Your character is psychotic. That it literally says that if you look it up. It doesn't necessarily pinpoint what psychoses they had in mind. Oh god, a cat found something over there. This is gonna be a wild ride, you guys. Anyway, it doesn't say what psychoses it's necessarily supposed to replicate, just that it does. Apparently your character hears a lot of voices, experiences like light sensitivity after mental health episodes. It doesn't necessarily sound like it would trigger just someone with anxiety or depression per se. So I feel comfortable playing it, but if anybody thinks they would be triggered by something like that, I will not play it on stream, or I will play it with an exclusive audience at some point, because, well, Dave really wants me to play it. Regardless, I'm probably going to play it on my own, but if you all do not want me to play it, I won't. It doesn't sound, it sounds more like it's replicating something akin to dissociative identity disorder or schizophrenia, something more akin to that nature. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure what all it entails. I have not played it. I haven't even booted it up yet. Hello? What do you got? He's got something. Spike, buddy. Sorry. It's gonna be a long stream. Try to tune out my cat. I do all this work to soundproof this room, and then the real problem is the cats in the cabinets along the way. I don't know why I bothered. Anyway, but I thought I'd see how you all would feel about playing it, or if you would want to watch something like that. It does have a lot of Norse mythology in it, which I think is interesting. I know we probably have a lot of other people that will think that's interesting. So I'll play it for you guys tonight and get like a few clips in. If you all don't like it or don't want me to pursue it, I won't. I'll play it on my own time. And we'll continue with Hollow Knight. Or revisit our Cult and Cult of the Lamb. Something to that effect. We have plenty to do. So it's not like we have any shortage of games that we can go back and revisit if we want to. But I don't know. Can I make a poll on here? Poll? Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna make a poll. Sick, I made a poll. I already did it. Whoa, hey. Check my it's 1 over. Now you have to get it to 6,600. Don't do that. Don't do that. Anyway. I set a poll. I think I set the poll. I think I did it. I don't know. Let me know. Did it work? I don't know. It won't say that. Yes, I did. Okay, so it's working. Okay. But I thought I would see how you guys felt about it. If you hate it, you hate it. It will only do like 6.6K. I was joking anyway. That's I was like, don't do that. I just happened to look up and it was already over. But good job. Appreciate it. Oh, Spike has abandoned his whatever he was playing with over there that was making a hell of a lot of noise. So we'll revisit this in a few, or at the end of the stream. What was that? Why did they do that? Did you see that? Did you see that? He's looking up at the lights too. Okay, sorry. My lights were possessed. Anyway, ignore that. We have some reading to do. Possessed lights or no. So, I don't know. They're just going to have to put up with it. But I think we can get through 5 and 6 today, because 5 is pretty short. So, we will see what we can get through. I don't think we'll make it to chapter 7, or if we do, we might have to hold off on it. So, there might be ambiance. The lights are getting into the vibe. The lights are contributing to the vibe. That's what they're trying to do. But we're going to read chapter 5 and chapter 6 today. And if you don't know what we're doing, we're making our way slowly through Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. We're on the 5th novel, Conference of Birds. The rest of all the other novels, everyone preceding this, is on my YouTube. You can visit that if you haven't caught up. But if you don't know what happened in the other 4 books, what are you doing here? How did you get here? Who sent you this? Ask them follow-up questions. Be more concerned. Anyway, so if you'd like to know what's going on, you can revisit the YouTube or go check out Ransom Riggs and his books. They're really great. I really enjoy them, and there's a lot of really cool pictures in here, old school pictures in here, and we got my favorite picture in the entire book series like today. So finally hit it, gang. My favorite thing. Anyway, if you need a little recap on where we left off, stuff's not great. Stuff's not great. A lot of whites broke out of prison. They have shut down the Panlupticon. It has a little bit of reserve power, but not a whole too terribly lot. And Nor has just found out that she is part of a prophecy, and they are trying to locate Abe's old business / partner, V, who is presumably Nor's mom. No relation? Probably. And so now we got a whole other mystery on our hands. Nor got put under for a while to try and find out details of where she used to live in hopes of tracking down V. And now we are combing a bunch of atlases. So that is where we were at now. Any questions, concerns? Anybody need to get up, find a pet or a drink or a blanket? It is freezing in here. And the lights won't stop flickering. Are we good to go? How y'all feeling? I'm ready to rock if you guys are. Too sick. Hellblade? Okay. We will do that. Right on time, Paul. Thank you. Okay. Chapter 5. Nor was a little unsteady on her feet for a few minutes, but would entertain no talk of resting. So we all headed downstairs to the mapping department. It was a baffling warren of tall library stacks and ladders on wheels, and the place was filled with bright white daylight, which came seemingly from the air itself. I assumed it was some peculiar trickery, as there were no windows and no lamps anywhere. Between the stacks were open areas with long, flat tables atop which maps could be spread out, and we found Olive, Enoch, and Claire at one such table, half buried in a pile of giant atlases. "We're nearly done with Oklahoma," Olive announced when she saw us. "Thank Hades," Enoch grumbled. "Have you brought lunch?" asked Claire. "This is no time for a break," Millard said. "Clear all these away. It seems we've been barking up the wrong tree." The 3 of them groaned. The rest of us piled the now useless Midwest maps on the floor and started over. Millard began giving orders like a drill sergeant, which, under any other circumstances, we would have resented. But this was his domain, and this task was too important, so we obeyed with little complaint. "Hugh," Millard barked, Climb up and get every atlas from that topmost shelf there, and be very careful with the big one. It's a real map of days, and it's in delicate condition. Jacob, make a list of all the loops in Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and Maryland, with long rivers immediately to the north and west of them. And Noor, I have a special task for you. The atlases of those states were divided among us. We paged methodically through them, looking for long rivers with very long names, for topography and town layouts that matched the map fragment H had given us. Soon we were lost in work. Hours passed. The atlases piled up around us in stacks so tall they divided us like cubicle walls. Millard made occasional grunts of interest or surprise at some little detail or another he'd stumbled across. After an hour, I asked Noor if she needed a break, but she shook her head. I slid a glass of water in front of her after another hour, and she drank it down in 2 gulps. Then looked up at me, surprised and grateful, as if she'd forgotten she needed things like water to function, and dove right back into the atlas she'd been combing through. An hour after that, Claire whined, "Anyone want lunch now?" and held up a finger she'd bandaged to twice its width after sustaining a tiny paper cut. "There's a new restaurant at the bottom of Eugene Street that's got 2 stars from the Muckrackers food critic." 2 stars out of how many? Hugh asked. 5, though it's the only establishment in the acre to have been rated above 1, so... "I guess we do need a break," Millard said with a sigh. "They say an army runs on its stomach." "You guys should definitely get something to eat," Noor said, but her head didn't rise from the page. "You're not coming?" I asked. "You go ahead," said Noor. "I'm not hungry." "That's the spirit," said Millard. Hugh slammed a book down a bit too hard. "If you all had only cared this bloody much about finding Fiona," he said angrily, "we would have had her back by now." Emma looked stung. "Oh, Hugh," she said, but he was already hurrying out, trying his best to hold back tears. A single bee buzzed in the spot where he'd been working. "I'll talk to him," Emma said and ran after him. Noor looked at me. "What just happened?" Millard said, "Our friend, Fiona, who Hugh has long been in love with, went missing a while ago. She's presumed dead." Bronwyn picked up the atlas Hugh had been leafing through. "Oh no," she said mournfully. "He was reading about Ireland." She held up the book for us to see. "Enoch, you were supposed to be watching him," Claire cried. Enoch only rolled his eyes. "Fiona is from Ireland," I explained to Noor. "I'm so sorry," said Noor, shaking her head. "This must be so awful for him." "You know, I had a dream about Fiona the other night," said Horace. Our heads whipped in his direction. "You did?" I asked. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I didn't want to get his hopes up. Not all my dreams are prophetic, and it can take time to sort out which are which." "What was the dream?" I asked. Millard went back to his atlas. "I'm listening," he said, "but you know I don't put much stock in dreams." "I know, Millard. You've only told me 10,000 times. Horace shook his head, but continued. "Anyway, in the dream, Fiona was riding on a bus. There was a little boy with her in a green tunic and a little hat with a feather in it, and she was frightened. I felt very keenly that she was in danger. It could mean nothing, but I wanted to tell someone. I think dreams contain lots of meaning, said Nor, but that doesn't have to be literally true. Horace looked at her gratefully. Just please don't tell Hugh, said Millard. He'll have us checking every bus in Britain, and when we find nothing, he'll be even more crushed than before. Emma and Hugh returned a little while later with cups of takeout stew for everybody. Hugh apologized for his outburst. Emma rewarmed each of our stews with a quick dip of her pinky into the brown liquid, and we ate while we worked. Don't any of you dare get stew on these atlases, Millard warned us. The official penalty for damaging a book is 30 years imprisonment, plus a hefty repair fee. Oops, Hugh said under his breath, surreptitiously wiping at a page with his shirt. After a few more hours, the seemingly sourceless light began to fade. We squinted and leaned closer to our work, determined to keep going. But then an officious boy appeared at the end of the stacks and bellowed, "The department is closing for the day. Kindly see your way out." "We'd better go," said Horace. "There are a few patients from the old asylum still loose in the building, and they're said to come out and roam around at night." "Finally," Enoch muttered. We were all exhausted. As we walked out, Nor asked Millard what progress we'd made. "Slow, but steady," he said. "We're a great deal closer than we were this morning, but there are acres of proverbial weeds left to plow through." He couldn't stifle a yawn. "Unless you happen to remember a town name?" "I'll try," Nor said. "Sorry to wear you all out like this." "Don't worry about it," I said. "Really." "This concerns us all," Emma added. Nor smiled meekly. "Thanks. It means a lot." We merged into the busy lobby where all the ministry's people were flooding out the doors and closing up for the day, when I overheard something that made me unreasonably happy. "Don't you worry," Hugh said to Nor. "We'll find her." And he patted her on the back. It was getting toward evening. Low on the horizon, a sickly yellow sun glinted at us through nets of factory smoke. Peculiars who'd been working all day were milling around in the streets and in the acre's few public squares, blowing off steam. There was a lot of it to blow off, with the recent drama and the pall of tension hanging over the entire loop, and every conversation I overheard as we walked sounded heavy and full of dread. Nor had slowed a little and fallen behind our group. I turned and saw her staring wistfully through the breaks in the tenement buildings into the distance. So much had happened to her today, to us all, but to her especially. She'd hardly had a moment to process it. I slowed my pace until she caught up to me. It took her a moment to notice, and then her head snapped up in my direction. "Sorry to lag," she said. "Just lost in my own head." "Anything you want to talk about?" She shook her head, looked down. For a moment, our steps synchronized on the worn cobblestones. Finally, she said, "Do you ever think about running away? Picking some door in the Panlupticon and just going somewhere for a while? Get away from it all?" "That's never really occurred to me, I said, frowning. Though it does sound appealing. That's never even occurred to you? She looked incredulous. How is that possible? You have 1,000 doors to 1,000 places just waiting to be discovered. No airport, no passport, no customs. Actually, that last part isn't true. We're getting special treatment these days only because things are so dire. But most peculiars need tickets for the Panlupticon, and they go through customs just like normals do. Nora rolled her eyes. You know what I mean. It's not the same thing at all. I smiled. I did know what she meant. I don't know, I said finally. I looked out toward the blurring horizon. Ever since the first time I came to Devil's Acre, it's been nothing but drama and chaos and putting out fires. I'd love to explore one day, but it's not something I've had much time to think about yet, I added, trying to put an optimistic spin on what had probably sounded a little hopeless. That's fair, she said. She looked into the horizon again. If you had to pick another loop to live in right this second, which Panlupticon door would you choose? Right this second? I asked. She nodded. Somewhere calm and beachy where nothing ever happens, I said right away. I could use some more boring in my life. I realized then that I was describing my hometown. The very place I'd wanted to escape my whole childhood. I wondered what the hell was happening to me. I'd go somewhere ancient, Nor said. Hey, how far back can you go? Into the past? As far back as loops have existed, I guess, which has got to be a few thousand years. Millard used to have a big map of days with a lot of super old collapsed loops marked in it, and there was some from ancient Rome, ancient Greece, ancient China. That sounds amazing, Nor said, a faraway look in her eyes. That's what I'll do. She paused. I mean, if I ever get the chance. I know you will, I said. She laughed. I like your optimism. One day, we'll put all the fires out, I said, and then we can explore as much as we like. She looked over at me and smiled, and I realized I'd said we without even thinking about it. We're falling behind, she said quietly, but she was still smiling when she said it. Just as we caught up with our group, some peculiar girls passed us going the opposite way. They jumped and waved, giggling and burst. Can I have your autograph? One said. I felt my face go hot with embarrassment. Nor stifled a surprised laugh before raising an eyebrow at me, and I shook my head, refusing to meet Nor's eyes. Can I have a kiss? Another girl called out. Now my skin was crawling too. I kept my gaze straight ahead, waiting for the mortifying moment to pass. Oi, I'll spare you a kiss, Enoch called after them, but the girls ignored him and kept walking. Emma glared at them. Finally, Nor nudged me with her elbow. So, does that happen a lot? Once in a while. Must be rough, she joked, but her smile was genuine. Maybe there was a secret silver lining to all this strange attention. After all, I was not above hoping that Nor Pradesh would find me just a little bit impressive for being inconsequentially famous. Hurry up, you two! Emma was glaring at us now. We picked up our pace a little, but I wasn't ready for the conversation to be over. At least until Noor said, "Was it weird, being with your grandpa's ex-girlfriend?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. I was so surprised. How did you know we were... It was pretty obvious. I see the way she looks at you. I sighed. I was hoping I was the only one who saw those looks. Well, we're not together anymore. Noor asked me what had happened. This I really didn't want to go into. She wasn't over him. I might have shriveled up and died of embarrassment if those words left my mouth. I think in the end it was the age difference, I said, which was maybe 10% true. We just couldn't relate. I can see that. I don't think she bought it. In fact, I'm sure she saw right through me, but she took pity on me anyway and let me change the subject, which was good enough for now. The 10 of us stopped for a moment to watch a group of telekinetics have a tug of war with a rope that none of them were touching. Noor was naturally fascinated, so we found uncomfortable seats on a low wall in Old Pie Square and stared out at the strangeness before us. So, what is there to do around here at night? Noor asked. There's the Shrunken Head, the public house on Stabbing Street, said Emma, but they mostly serve embalming fluids and mice wine, and it gets crowded. There's the aforementioned hanging, said Enoch. Happens every night at 6 p.m. sharp by the docks. I really don't like hangings, Enoch, said Olive. Oh, fine. It's boring anyway once you've seen it a few times. The Grimbear Bloodsport ring got shut down after the Whites were defeated, thank the birds, said Hugh, though I noticed Emma and Horace's faces tighten at the word defeated. It had a false ring now. Most everything is shut down because of the stricter security rules, said Bronwyn. Plus, there's a new curfew that starts at sundown. Which is fine. I think civilized people should be in bed by dark anyway, said Claire. The security rules apparently included guards watching over everything. I could see them on roofs around the square, scanning the area. Emma saw me looking and said, That's the home guard. New recruits, most of the old ones got wiped out in the Hologast raids. Poor buggers, Enoch muttered. The Embrans aren't taking any chances, said Bronwyn. I think they're quite scared. Just then a group of people started chanting and marching around in a circle in the middle of the square. What do we want? Shouted one of the marchers. Loop freedom, the others replied. When do we want it? Said the lead marcher. Relatively soon, the others bellowed angrily. Well, this is something, said Horace. Look, democracy. Some of the marchers were carrying signs. We want equal treatment. Another, echoing that morning's muckracker headline, read Embran incompetence. These are the muddle brains we were telling you about back in Florida, Enoch muttered to me, who want to stop living in loops and go join the real world. Here's some guards. As if we wouldn't be burned at the stake, said Emma. Didn't we all study the same peculiar history books? The movement is growing, said Millard. If the Imbrans don't handle their business and get the whites under control, they'll lose support amongst the rank and file. But Imbrans are the reason we survived the 20th century, Claire said angrily. Haven't they proven they know best? Without their loops, we would all have been eaten by Khals Hollows. Some are saying we could have better prepared for the raids, said Millard, and that we should have attacked their compound here in Devil's Acre long ago. Sounds like Monday morning quarterbacking, said Nor. Thank you, exactly, said Millard. What's a quarterback? Ungrateful sods, Enoch shouted at the marchers. I felt a sudden coldness near me, and a smell like refrigerated compost wafted over us. We're meeting this Sunday. We're meeting this Saturday, said a low voice. We'd love to have you come and speak to everyone. I turned to see 7 feet of black robes. You're all invited, Sharon said, teeth gleaming. You're associated with those fools? Said Enoch. But you work for the Imbrans, Claire barked at him. I have a right to my own political beliefs, and I happen to believe it's time the Imbrans' long monopoly on power transitioned into something more equitable. They listen to regular Peculiar's ideas, said Emma. They have public forums. They pretend to listen, nod their heads, then do whatever they think is best, said Sharon. Well, they're Imbrans, said Bronwyn. See, that attitude is precisely the problem, Sharon replied. You're precisely the problem, Claire shot back. Suddenly a loud, deep rumble shook the ground and rattled all the windows around the square. Someone in the crowd screamed, and several of the marchers dove to the ground. What was that? Horace yelped. Another jailbreak? That's either a disaster or a breakthrough, Sharon said, a hand cupped to his hood, listening. The new battery wasn't supposed to be fully charged until tonight, and he took off toward Bentham's house faster than a man that big should have been able to run. The curfew went into effect, and we went back to the house. Everyone was tired and wanted to unwind and get ready for bed. It had been a long day, spent in close proximity to one another, and we'd all had our fill of conversation and excitement. Well, almost all of us. Nora and I found ourselves alone in the upstairs common room. I couldn't stop thinking about our earlier conversation. She'd been so surprised that I hadn't used the Panlupticon freely, and it made me wonder about myself. Why hadn't I? I'd heard my own answers out loud, of course, but I wondered now if they were the full truth. Worse, Nor had gotten the idea that I was uncurious, which I knew wasn't true at all. But my quiet contemplation only inspired her to ask me more questions. What's wrong? Something on your mind? And I realized then that there were lots of things I hadn't told her about myself. Things I wanted her to know. Things about my early days with the Peculiars, about how I'd first met them, about what it was like to find out I was one of them. I told her the whole story. My coming to misty, mysterious Cairnholm with my dad, the clues I followed from my grandfather's last words and his old photographs, and their leading me to Miss Peregrine's ruined house and then into her loop. meeting these kids who I had thought were now either very old or long dead, and my bafflement and shock that they were still kids. All the doubt I had wrestled with. Should I believe my eyes? Could I trust my own mind? Nor actually gasped when I got to the part where I realized I could see the hollows too, and then again when I told her about the stranger on the island revealing himself to be my psychiatrist and a white. I talked until my jaw hurt, but found myself leaving out small details, mostly about Emma and me. I didn't want to go into it. The role my feelings for her had played in my decision to abandon my normal life, but it felt good to talk, to connect with someone who seemed to feel the same thing as I once felt. It made me feel less alone. But eventually all my babble made me self-conscious. "Okay, your turn," I said quickly. "I want to know more about your life." "No way," she shook her head. "My life only got interesting like 3 months ago, and you know about that already. Now tell me what happened after you all left the island. I hate cliffhangers." "I'm sorry, but your life could not possibly have been more boring than mine was before all of this." "Just tell me this, and then if you insist on talking about my boring life, we can. Did you ever think about telling your parents?" I almost laughed. "Yeah, I actually tried to, but my mom couldn't handle it, and my dad basically disowned me. It got so bad, Miss Peregrine had to wipe their memories, so they don't even remember." "Yeah, you mentioned that before," she said quietly. "I'm so sorry." "They're on an extended vacation now. They think I'm home alone. I guess they'll start worrying when they come back and I'm not around." "The part about your parents totally sucks. But the rest is like destiny or something. Your mom and dad didn't really feel like family to you. Believe me, I know what that's like. But in the end, you found a new one." She smiled and brought her hands slowly together, forming a perfectly round ball of shadow between her palms. "It's amazing how it happened." Then something changed behind her eyes, and a heavy cloud seemed to pass over her. There was a small gap between us on the ratty couch, and I scooted towards her and closed it. "You're gonna find her," I said, wrapping my hands around hers. "I know you are." She shrugged, feigning indifference. "I guess we'll see," she said. "Who knows? Maybe she won't even remember me." "Of course she will. I'm sure she's still heartbroken over you, and I know she's going to be so happy to see you again." She drew in a long breath and sighed. "Can we stay here and talk about our boring old lives for a while?" "Yeah," I laughed. "That sounds nice." And we did. We talked for hours about her old life and mine and what happened after I left the island and a dozen other things. I could have talked to her all night and into the morning, and probably would have had Horace not padded downstairs, bleary-eyed, complaining that he could hear our voices through the door. Only then did either of us realize how late it was, or how bone-tired we really were, and we went, regretfully, to bed. Chapter 6. I woke up for the second time in 2 days to loud banging. This wasn't an explosion, though. It was someone pounding hard on a door. It was still dark out. "Jacob!" Emma shouted from downstairs. I scrambled out of bed, barefoot and bedraggled, and raced into the hall. There was a thunder of feet on the stairs as we all rushed down. Emma was standing at the front door, which was open. "Miss Blackbird's here," she said, stepping aside to reveal the Embryn standing there. "It's about Miss Peregrine." "Where is she?" I said. "Is she here?" Miss Blackbird skipped the greetings and got straight to the point. "Miss Peregrine is in America in the Loop where the peace talks are being held," she said, her 3 eyes staring at me. "We got the Panlupticon working an hour ago, and shortly after that we received an urgent message from her via parrot." Miss Blackbird pushed into the house. She looked rattled. "There's a situation," she said cryptically. "She asked for you specifically." "Me?" I said. "To come there?" "Immediately," Miss Blackbird replied. "Can you say what it's about?" asked Emma. "If it's you she's asking for," Miss Blackbird said, "I'd imagine there's a hologast involved." I swallowed hard, that old tightness in my chest again. "Just let me get dressed." "There's no way we're letting him go alone," Nora said. She had slipped in beside me without my noticing, and when I glanced at her in surprise, she squeezed my hand. "I would never have advised that Jacob go alone," said Miss Blackbird. "But you're much too inexperienced, Miss Pradesh, and besides, Leo Burnham and his men will be there, and seeing you will be like kicking a nest of angry hornets." "I know that," Nora said, frowning. "I wasn't going to suggest myself." I was secretly glad. The idea of taking Nora anywhere near a hologast voluntarily made my stomach hurt. "Choose 2 friends," said Miss Blackbird, ignoring Nora. "Get dressed and meet me outside in 3 minutes." And then she swept outside in a dramatic flourish and slapped the door closed behind her. I needed no time to think about it. I asked Emma and Enoch to come with me. Even though Enoch was a pain in the ass and things were a little tense with Emma at the moment, they were brave, resourceful, and good under pressure. I knew I could count on them. "I'll get my things," Emma said, her face hardening with resolve, and she dashed up the creaky stairs. Enoch grinned. "Oh, fine, I'll save your arse again. Let me get a few pickled hearts," and he ran after Emma. Then we all went upstairs. I put on the new clothes and boots I'd gotten the day before and said goodbye to everyone. My friends filed past me in the hall, wishing me luck and whispering advice. "Give him hell, Jacob," said Hugh. "Watch your back," worried Horace. "Do what Miss Peregrine tells you," said Claire. I pretended to be unafraid, but something icy was building in the pit of my stomach. For a moment, Nora and I found ourselves alone. "Are you really the only one who can do this?" she asked me. "Don't the Embryns have, adults who can handle things like this for them?" "Not this kind of problem," I said, "if it's what I think it is." "I know," she said. "Just had to ask." She was trying to put on a brave face, but couldn't hide her worry. I hoped I was hiding mine. "I wish you could come, but I think Miss Blackbird is right. I have too much to do here anyway." She paused, looking uncertain, then said, "I remembered something else last night from when I was a little kid with Mama. It was a road sign I could see from our driveway. I don't know if it's a big deal or not, but I need to find out." "It could be something," I said. "Are you sure you'll be okay here? You're the one to worry about. I'll probably just be combing through old books with Millard and Company. It was sweet to hear her refer to my peculiar friends by name so easily. She was fast becoming one of us. I know you'll find her, I said, and I'd really like to be there when it happens. I'd like that too, Nora said. She attacked me with a hug. Take care of yourself, she said into my chest. I need you in one piece. We stood there holding each other for a long moment. I didn't want to move. I'll be fine, promise. You better be. And I'll be back soon. I kissed the top of her head. She smelled like shampoo and books, and the ice that had been forming in my stomach began ever so slightly to melt. Enoch was standing on the stairs, arms folded. And then there was a knock at the door, and I heard Miss Blackbird shout, "That's 3 minutes, Mr. Portman." Pod. Yes. Okay, fine. Miss Blackbird was silent as she led Emma, Enoch, and me across the acre. The sunrise had not quite broken yet, and Home Guard soldiers were still out enforcing the new curfew. We reached Bentham's house. A few temporal affairs minions stood watch outside, and on the roof I could see more guards peering out into the distance. Everyone was on high alert. We went inside and up the stairs, but instead of stopping at one of the usual floors, we kept climbing. The door to the loop where the conference was being held wasn't in the main Panlupticon hallway, but in Bentham's dusty attic, surrounded by his old glass-encased curiosities. At the far end of the room was a beautiful old elevator. This, Miss Blackbird told us, was the loop entrance. It was new, she explained, connected by the Embrins especially for the conference. She pressed a small brass button on the door, and the elevator slid open. The interior was all rich, oiled wood. There was a panel on the rear wall with a large lever attached and 3 words stamped around it in Art Deco lettering. Up, down, loop. Please watch yourselves over there, America, she muttered, shaking her head. Is no place for children. Sounds like you're ready to start planning our funeral, Enoch said as we filed into the elevator. Not at all, Miss Blackbird said, then tried to smile encouragingly. Best of luck, eh? Here goes nothing, I thought, and threw the lever all the way to loop. The door slid closed by itself. The elevator car descended a foot, then jolted to a stop. Enoch looked irritated and said, "What the devil?" And then we began to free fall. My feet floated off the floor and my last meal threatened to come up. What is happening? Emma managed to say, though I could hardly hear her over my popping ears. And then everything went black, and we lurched suddenly and dramatically to the left and were thrown against the wall. A few seconds later, a pleasant chime sounded, ding, and the lights flicked out again. We came to a shuddering stop. I was swaying on my feet, battling nausea, when the door slid open to a wall of darkness. We were hit by a rush of hot, damp air, which felt like being bear-hugged by a big, sweaty man. Where are we? Said Enoch, and I felt a wave of dread pass over me. Emma lit a flame in her hand as she took a tentative step out of the elevator, and the glow showed us a long, rugged tunnel hewn from rock, not much taller or wider than me. I was slammed with a flood of awful sense memories, and my skin puckered despite the heat. The last time I was in a place like this, I was shot with a gun, and a giant tree creature had nearly killed everyone I cared about. Emma must have been feeling something similar. "Oh, God," she said. "You don't think we got sent to the—" "Don't be daft," Enoch said. "That place got flushed down the interdimensional loo." "You're in a gold mine, a half-mile underground." It was Miss Peregrine's voice, doubling, tripling with echoes, and with it came an instant relief. This wasn't a nightmare. We hadn't been sent back to that hell maze. A gleam of light appeared, and she came around a corner, a lantern shining in her hand. "Miss P," Emma cried. "Are you okay? What's happening?" We rushed toward her, and she toward us. Emma gave her a quick, hard embrace. "I'm fine," she said quickly. "But you and Mr. O'Connor shouldn't have come. This is a dangerous place." "Figured that," said Enoch, "which is exactly why we came." "Miss Blackbird told me to bring friends," I said in their defense, "and I asked them." It was clear Miss Peregrine didn't approve, but she knew trying to send them back would be useless. It amazed me. After everything we'd all faced together, she was still underestimating her charges. "All right," she said, shaking her head. "So long as you stay quiet, stay behind me, don't talk to Americans, and don't wander off on your own. Do you understand?" "Yes, miss," they said in unison. She nodded. "Welcome to Marrowbone, children. We have quite a mess on our hands." Whose crackpot idea was it to hold the peace conference down a mine? Enoch had to shout his question at Miss Peregrine's back. She was walking so fast we were practically chasing her through the tunnels. "This is just the entrance. The talks are being held in the town above us at the surface. I wish you were costumed in era-appropriate clothes." She gestured to a sign, pointing down another spur of the tunnel that read "Costuming." "But there isn't time, and the normals in this loop have mostly been rounded up anyway." "Rounded up?" I said. She didn't answer me. We came to another elevator, much more primitive and scary looking than the last. We crowded into its wire cage, and Miss Peregrine pulled a lever on the floor. A giant engine roared to life somewhere, and the elevator began to screech upward. It was a claustrophobe's nightmare. All we saw for a while on all sides of us was passing rock. "It's a long ride," Miss Peregrine said, her voice rising over the noise. "So now's a good time to tell you a few things, besides which it's hard to find a place in Marrowbone where an American spy isn't trying to overhear what you're saying." I couldn't help but notice how tired Miss Peregrine seemed. Her hair was disheveled, and her blouse was tucked in crookedly, the kinds of details she never overlooked. "There was a kidnapping earlier today. The victim was an important peculiar in the Northern clan, and it appeared she was taken by someone from the California clan. So a
posse of northerners was assembled, and despite the Imbrin's strident objections, they rode into the Californios camp and took a prisoner. Fighting broke out, but thankfully we were able to stop it before anyone was killed.
But that's not the whole story, I'm guessing? Emma said.
No. The evidence of the Californios' guilt is too perfectly obvious, almost constructed. It stinks of the whites, not to mention it occurred only a few hours after the whites' prison break. I believe they snuck in and took the girl, and did it in a way that implicated the Californios, practically guaranteeing a conflict between clans that would destroy our attempts to make peace. It took an immense amount of persuasion on our part to prevent a battle in the middle of town today. I'm afraid we'd only manage to delay one unless we can prove beyond a doubt that whites were responsible.
And you think a Hologast might have been involved, I said, and that's why you called for me?
Yes,
the Imbrin said. You want me to find evidence, I said. Something only I can see?
That's right.
You want Jacob to prevent a war, said Enoch, twisting a finger in his ear as if he hadn't heard correctly, by giving the Americans evidence they can't see.
You'll have to figure out a way to make them see it,
Miss Peregrine said, and she laid her hand on my shoulder.
I'm sorry, my boy, but you're the best hope we have right now.
We came out of that black hell into a cool, bright day, and I could breathe for the first time in a while. Miss Peregrine led us quickly past 3 men with guns. One looked like a mountain man, decked in raggedy furs. The second was dressed like a cowboy in a wide-brimmed hat and a long leather duster coat. The third, in a suit and tie, had to be one of Leo Burnham's guys. They were staring one another down with such intensity that they barely registered our presence.
1 sentry from each of the American clans, Miss Peregrine said under her breath. Best not to make eye contact.
And then we came to our ride. I'd been expecting something along the lines of a stagecoach. Instead, there was a horse-drawn, glass-enclosed hearse waiting for us.
It was all they had on short notice, Miss Peregrine said by way of an apology. Climb in.
Enoch oohed. Emma made a sour face, but made no comment. There was no time to debate. The hearse's attendant held the back door open for us, and we climbed inside. There was just enough headroom to sit upright. How fancy, said Enoch, running a hand over the black velvet curtains. It was the second time in 3 days that I'd taken up space normally reserved for a dead body. It seemed like the universe was trying to tell me something, and not in a terribly subtle way. Look at this old-ass hearse, you guys. This is my favorite picture. Okay, sorry. I'm done. Of course it is. I know, look at it, it's so pretty. That's exactly what I want my hearse to look. No, Thank you for indulging me. That's my favorite picture. No, I'm so sorry, Pawn. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. I love it so much. Anyway. Miss Peregrine said something to the driver, a long-bearded man with a flat aspect. He flicked the reins and we took off, leaving the attendant behind with the 3 armed men. A landscape of forest and hills rolled by, and those hills, not covered in trees, were littered with mining machinery. Narrow-gauge train cars heaped with excavated rock, machines belching steam and smoke into the air, heaps of slag. There were a few actual miners here and there, smoking, leaning tiredly on shovels, looped normals from the period, I assumed. Miss Peregrine pointed out the clan's camps as we rode. That collection of buffalo hide tents at the forest edge was where the northern delegation camped. The Californios delegation occupied Poverty Flat, the shacks at the edge of town. And Leo's 5 Boroughs clan stayed in the Eagle Pass Hotel, the best and only accommodations in Marrowbone. Where do the Imbrans sleep then? I asked. In trees, she said simply. We rode into town through Poverty Flat, a depressing collection of hovels that looked like they might blow away in a strong breeze. A few blocks later, we were in the center of Marrowbone, and it was a proper Old West town, the first I'd seen with my own eyes. The streets were lined with the usual assortment of saddle shops, gunsmiths, and saloons I'd come to expect from watching cowboy movies. Only one thing seemed off. There was no one around. The horses slowed, then stopped. Miss Peregrine called out to the driver and asked what the matter was. I ain't going 1 foot farther, he said. One of his horses let out a high, nervous whinny. Looks like this is our stop, Miss Peregrine said, and we climbed out. Where is everyone? I asked. Miss Peregrine gestured up the street. Just ahead. I squinted, then saw them. Dozens of people standing in the shadows of awnings, crouched behind barrels and wagons on opposite sides of the street. The Northerners on our left, facing the Californios on our right. As we walked toward them, yes, toward them, it became quickly apparent the 2 clans were in some kind of silent standoff, like the armed men at the mine entrance. Neutral party, Miss Peregrine shouted as we approached. Hold your fire. Hold fire, shouted someone on the northern side of the street. Hold fire, came from the reply from the Californios side. Another Imbran stole out of the storefront and hurried down the wooden sidewalk toward us. It was Miss Cuckoo, her metallic silver hair and dark skin livid against Marrowbone's chalky, sun-bleached streets. Home! She was anxious, short of breath. Her eyes flickered toward me. Good, you've got him there all waiting. Have there been any aggressions? Asked Miss Peregrine. Any shots fired? Not yet, by some miracle, said Miss Cuckoo. We followed her quickly back the way she'd come, our shoes ringing hollowly against the wooden sidewalk. I couldn't imagine what Miss Cuckoo was talking about until I saw, among the Northerners, a sallow-faced woman armed with a giant log, a foot thick and 20 long at least, held over her head like a javelin she might toss. Not far from her stood a pair of men with dead birds hanging from their belts and shotguns in their hands, and near them was a young girl rolling a boulder from side to side on the ground in front of her, using just the tip of one finger to move it. On the California side, a boy in a cowboy hat was glaring across the street while kneading his hands, and I could see electric sparks coursing between his fingers. An even younger boy stood at fearless attention with a bandolier of bullets strapped across his chest and a sombrero on his head so big it smushed down his ears a little. Here's some pictures for you. And one last one. Both sides of the street bristled with people brandishing weapons, peculiar and conventional, and it was clear just one act of violence could set off a bloody battle. Miss Peregrine stopped and turned to us.
"We are about to meet the clan leaders," she said. "Don't speak unless you're spoken to."
And then she turned and went through a doorway, and we followed her into what I gathered was a saloon. Bar, tables, the sour smell of spilled beer. There were maybe 10 people inside, clustered around a couple of the tables near the bar, and as soon as we walked in, they all fell silent and turned to stare at us. Miss Cuckoo blocked our way and hissed, "Wait!" while Miss Peregrine approached a gentlemanly fellow in a wheelchair.
"That's Mr. Parkins," Miss Cuckoo whispered at us, "leader of the California clan."
Across the room, a man in a voluminous buffalo coat was staring bullets at Parkins while rolling a coin between the knuckles of one hand.
"Antoine Lamoth, head of the Northern clan,"
Miss Cuckoo added. Flanking the two leaders were men I took to be their personal guards. One was dressed like a fur trapper, the other like John Wayne, and a small, elegant, older woman I recognized as Miss Wren was speaking to Lamoth in an undertone.
"And over there's Leo Burnham," said Miss Cuckoo, "who I believe you already know."
It was him, all right, unmistakable in his pinstripe suit, cream-colored Homburg, and purple tie, one elbow up on the bar, watching the proceedings with a vaguely amused look while sipping a drink. I resisted a powerful urge to go punch his ugly face. Miss Peregrine went to join Miss Wren, who was still speaking quietly and urgently with Lamoth. After a bit more arguing between the two, it was Miss Peregrine's turn to talk. I tried reading her lips with little success, but it looked like Miss P wasn't finding much success either. Lamoth was shaking his head angrily. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Pictures. That's Lamoth. I wanted to get it right because I keep mixing them up.
and Parkins.
Parkins, leader of the California clan, had clearly been watching this exchange when he slapped the arm of his wheelchair. He seemed furious. "Give it a goddamn chance, Lamothe," he shouted. Lamothe spun around, his face turning red. "Give me back my goddamn Earthworker." "We didn't take your goddamn Earthworker," Parkins exploded. Their bodyguards tensed, readying to draw weapons should they need to. "Sure you didn't," Lamothe again. "You've only been talking about how badly you want one for the last 50 years. Parkins' chair rolled forward a few feet of its own accord. "We didn't take her, and that's that. Now listen here, you people had better bring Ellery back to our camp by sundown, or there'll be hell to pay." I assumed Ellery was the name of the prisoner, the one taken as revenge. I frowned. This felt like a lot to keep track of. My head was ping-ponging back and forth as the two clan leaders traded threats and insults. "Why wait until sundown?" Lamothe cried. "Come at us!" Two raccoons that had been hiding in the folds of Lamothe's coat rose up and hissed in Parkins' direction. They were attached to the lining of his coat by their tails. Miss Peregrine and Miss Wren were pleading with the men to calm down, while Miss Cuckoo slowly shuttled Enoch, Emma, and me toward the door. But we found it blocked from the other side by another of Leo's men. Leo Burnham unleaned himself from the bar, stepped between Lamothe and Parkins, and bellowed, "Shut up, all of you!" And amazingly, they did. "Antoine, you really want to start a war with Parkins over something he maybe didn't do?" "He did do it," Lamothe growled, which nearly started another shouting match. "We let the birds drag us out to this hick loop so we could iron out our differences, no? So if they think Parkins didn't do this thing, at least let them make their case." "My thinking exactly," said Parkins.
"Thank you, Leo," Miss Wren said. "Well said."
"Fine," said Lamothe, glaring at Miss Peregrine. "Say your piece." Leo cocked his thumb at us. "These your hotshot crime scene investigators, Peregrine? The ones hiding behind Frenchie's skirt?" "Nobody's hiding," I said, and stepped forward. I saw Leo's face change. He finally recognized me. "Wait a goddamn minute," he said. "This kid?" He was shaking his head, almost laughing. "You got a lot of nerve, Peregrine." "You know him?" said Lamothe. "He's a troublemaker, and his grandfather was a criminal." My leg twitched. I wanted to slap him. Miss Peregrine put a hand on my back as if to say, "I'll handle this."
"You're mistaken on both points, I assure you. Jacob is one of our best and brightest, and the most accomplished tracker of Hologast in the world."
"There's more than one?" Leo said, narrowing his eyes at me. "I can see him, sense him from a quarter-mile away," I said. I was about to continue and talk about how I could control them when Miss Peregrine squeezed my shoulder and cut me off.
"His detection skills have saved our lives many times," she said quickly.
Leo seemed reluctant to accept this, but after a moment of internal struggle, he let it go. Miss Peregrine had clearly done a lot to earn his trust in the days since I had last seen him, when he'd hardly been able to tolerate the sight of her. What makes you think a Hologast had anything to do with it? Leo asked, still eyeballing me.
Experience and intuition, said Miss Peregrine. I can't prove it, but I think Jacob can.
She turned to face Parkins and Lamothe.
And if he doesn't find any compelling evidence, we won't stand in your way. Settle this, however you must.
But I warn you, Miss Wren said, her face pallid and grave.
If you make war, the Embrins will not take sides, and the wider world's loops will be shut to you forever.
Leo laughed. The rest of the world can go to hell. Let them look if they like, Lamothe said with disgust, his raccoons rising up to hiss venomously at Parkins. I already know where the trail leads. Where the trail began was the Northern Clan's camp, a collection of large and rather impressive animal skin tents outside of town. Some were elaborate, with doors and windows cut into them, and one was 2 stories tall. Lamothe's, I assumed. One was even suspended in the trees, high above our heads. Lamothe showed us the tent from which the girl, Ellery was her name, had been taken. He showed us the backside of the tent, which faced empty woods and where it had been ripped open. He showed us the bed where she'd been sleeping when she was taken. It had happened earlier in the day. There were clear signs that a struggle had occurred. A flipped cot, personal items strewn across the floor, but none of which I would consider the classic signs of a Hologast attack. No python-shaped depressions in the grass from the whipping of tongues, no bite marks made with distinctly long razored teeth, and most disappointingly, no puddles of Hologast residue, the stinking black goo that leaked incessantly from their eye sockets. But the clan leaders and Embrins were watching me search, and I knew there would be trouble if it looked like I was getting frustrated. So I pretended to examine Ellery's pillow very closely and feigned interest in the texture of the long tear in the tent wall. Meanwhile, I could hear Emma outside the tent showing people the Whites' mugshots in the hopes one of them had been seen, but she was coming up empty. I began to get worried about failing and about how the hell we would get out of this loop if a war between 2 extremely well-armed peculiar clans broke out. Lamothe himself was getting frustrated. He sensed I wasn't finding anything, and he called for one of his underlings to bring in the evidence they had collected. We found this pitched into the trees. He pulled a knife out of a bag and dangled it. It's the one that was used to cut open this tent, you can tell by the serrated edge, and it's one of theirs. He pointed out a symbol carved into the knife's leather handle, which looked like a C inside a braided lariat. It's one of ours, Parkins admitted, but we don't know how it got there. The hell you don't. Could have been stolen from us, Parkins said, planted by these Whites. Lamothe's burly bodyguard stepped forward. What about the drag marks? He said. They lead straight to your camp. Could have been faked, Parkins shouted. Hell, maybe you faked it so you could justify coming for one of our people. The emotional temperature was near boiling. Now, gentlemen, Miss Wren said, putting herself between the 2 angry men. I'm sure Jacob is about to prove our case. Almost got something, I lied, just trying to buy time. Give me 1 more minute. Miss Peregrine rushed over to me. I hope you're not kidding, she whispered. I winced. Her face fell. For a moment she looked hopeless, then distracted by something, and a spark of what seemed like inspiration lit up her face. She turned to face the others.
"Excuse me," she said loudly. "Mr. Portman has had a breakthrough. Please follow us."
She marched out of the tent, crooking a finger at me to follow.
"Just what I expected," she said, faking excitement. "A very clear trail of ocular residue."
"Of what?" Lamoth said.
"Eye leakage. Every Hologast weeps a constant stream of oily tears. Only Jacob can see it, and he has, and it leads this way."
"Jacob, that's brilliant," Emma said, color returning to her pale cheeks. Enoch punched me lightly in the shoulder. "Knew you were good for something." I was baffled, of course. What was Miss Peregrine up to?
"You're finding drips along the tree line," she hissed quickly in my ear.
Having no other choice, I played along and pretended I was following a trail. We walked along the forest edge, Miss Peregrine at my side. When these pissed-off cowboys and mountain men inevitably realized I was making all this up, I was pretty sure one of them would shoot me. It wouldn't be long. The troops were getting restless. Lamoth started grumbling. "What's more likely," he was saying, "that some invisible monster took my Ellery and set up Parkins and his people to look like they did it? Or that this California trash finally kidnapped her? Everyone knows how bad they need an earth worker. They're piss-poor farmers and can't get nothing to grow." Let me say something," said Leo, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet for some time. "I don't want to say this, because it's not something I'm proud of. But we had a white attack just a few days ago. Busted into my HQ with a Hologast and stole a very promising ferrule right out from under me. From my house." "You saw it?" Parkins said, turning around in his chair, which was floating a few inches above the rough ground as his bodyguard pushed it. "No, John. The damn thing's invisible. But I saw a man thrown across the room by it, and the stink is incredible." Oh my God, I thought. Burnham had thought H was a white. It made a certain sense. H was in command of that hollow, like a white would have been. And when they found his body, he'd had no eyes, hence no pupils, to prove otherwise. "It still doesn't make a lick of sense," Lamoth said. "Why take Ellery? They're easier peculiars to kidnap. Do the whites have crops to grow and fields to cultivate?"
"To cause chaos," Miss Wren said darkly. "When the rest of peculiardom is in chaos, they thrive. When we are distracted, they can get on with their real work."
"Which is what?" asked Lamoth. Miss Wren sighed.
"Would that we knew."
All this time I'd been pretending to find more drips of eye goo. Miss Peregrine was looking up at the trees half the time, and twice she saw something there that made her nudge me in a slightly different direction. Then I saw one. A real one. I almost couldn't believe it. A footprint-sized patch of stamped grass, and in the center of it, a black stain. I stopped suddenly and bent down to examine it. "What is it, boy?" Parkins said. "Residue," I replied, excited before I could catch myself. "I mean, an extra big drip of it." I pressed my finger into it. It squished a little, still wet, and the skin of my fingertip began to burn and throb. Damn, the stuff was acidic. Before wiping it off, I brought the finger to my nose and sniffed and nearly gagged at the unmistakable rotten meat scent. Definitely a hologast. And not just any hologast, but the one I had sprung from the Bloodsport ring. The one that, until recently, had been powering the Panlupticon.
I know this one, I said. I recognize the smell.
Like a blessed hellhound, Leo marveled. I looked at Miss Peregrine, amazed. How did you know? She just smiled. I followed the trail, a real one now, very quickly. The black drops were closer together in places where the hollow had slowed, and further apart when it had moved fast. I didn't always have to see the spots with my eyes to know where they were. Sometimes I could smell them. I found I could even smell them 10, 15 feet away. The trail followed the trees to the mine, but it skirted the entrance and curved around the side, and that's where I found a puddle of hologast slime nearly a foot in diameter. He'd been waiting here for a long time. I was bending to get a closer look when I heard Lamoth call out to his man, and they crouched down, examining something on the ground. Then they stood up, and Lamoth extended his hand to Miss Peregrine. There was something small and white wriggling in his palm.
What is that? She said.
It's one of Ellery's worms, Lamoth said. They wriggle out through her eye patch sometimes when she's upset.
Then we know she was here. And so was the hologast.
Well, that proves it, Parkins said. It was them whites and their hollow. They took her out of the loop. But someone would have seen 'em leave, said Leo. We have guards posted. Not if they went out this way, said Lamoth, and he walked over to a large boulder that stood against the side of the hill. Somebody help me push. It took 7 of us, but we were able to roll the boulder a few feet to one side. Behind it was a tunnel that led away into the dark. I'll be damned, Parkins said. Is that a back way into the mine? And out of the loop, said Leo. A hollow wouldn't have had any trouble moving that boulder, I pointed out. Well, I think that about clears things up, don't you? Parkins said testily. Now, Lamoth, your people better return my girl and double quick. Lamoth laughed. Oh, this doesn't end here. This ain't over until we get Ellery. Parkins was practically vibrating with frustration. Now listen here, Lamoth. You don't see Burnham holding up the talks because the whites took a feral from him. This is different. This was an act of war perpetrated upon me while we were supposed to be talking peace.
Mr. Lamoth, be reasonable,
Miss Wren pleaded. He rounded on her. Okay, try this on. You say these were the same whites who broke out of your jail, so either you can't keep your own house in order, or I'm left to assume you let 'em out on purpose.
That's absurd,
Miss Wren cried. He makes a damn good point, said Leo. Your birds were supposed to have put the kibosh on these whites and their monsters months ago. And now they're out raising hell again. How can we trust anyone so incompetent? Lamoth turned his hissing raccoons on me. So you're some famous hotshot tracker, he said. Well, you better be. Lamoth stepped toward me and shoved a small card into my hands. It was a photograph of a girl wearing an eye patch and a giant black dress that swallowed her bottom half. No, Miss Peregrine snatched the photo away from me.
Jacob's not involved in this.
You're the one dragged him into it, Lamoth said, his eyes burning like coals. Clean up your mess, Peregrine. Get my girl back, or you can forget about any piece of cord. And here is Ellery. And that is the end of chapter 7. How long is chapter 6? I'm checking to see how long chapter 7 is. How long is this? How long is this? How long is this? I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna make it. I don't think I'm gonna make it. It's okay. So we end a little early, and I played more video games. Is that really so bad? What'd you all think? How are you liking it? Is this fun for you guys? Is everybody having fun? That works. Pond's been laying here so quietly and calmly this whole time. Good Pond. And Spike fell asleep in the chair, so they actually didn't end up causing too many problems. There was one little bit where Pond was like slapping at the door. But it went okay. Got a little rocky in the middle there, but we're all doing all right. Isn't that right, Pond? What a good kitty. What a good cat. I'd show you her, but I don't want to pick her up. I wonder if I can angle the camera. You can see Pond. She's so peaceful. She's so peaceful. Look at this cat. Come on, say hi. Yeah. What a good cat. What a good cat. Taking a little nap. Taking just a little nap, huh? A little nappy nap. What a good kid. Where'd your collar go? Where did your collar... Okay. No idea. She must have gotten it off somehow. Yeah. What a good kitty. Sweet baby angel. Yeah, chin scritches. Yeah. Speaking of cats, cat facts are all the way across this futon. Hold on. Let me I gotta clear some things and maneuver myself to get the cat facts, because I unfairly left the cat facts over on the other end of this futon. Hold on. Pond, don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere, Pond. This is a temporary upset. Please don't leave. No. Aw. She almost made it. She just got up. She was like, what the... and then got up. I was trying to lean around her. It did not work out. I've committed a crime. Okay. I have to get the book for cat facts. What are we gonna do? We always do cat facts. I didn't mean to disturb her. It was an accident. It was a side effect. How else would I read you about Himalayans? Anyway, who's ready for cat facts? I hope you appreciated it. It resulted in Pond leaving. This is not sponsored content. I'm just drinking a Celsius. Alright, Himalayans. Very similar to the Persian, but with the pointed coloration of the Siamese, the Himalayan was first developed in the 1920s by cat lovers who wished for a uniquely colored, long-haired cat. The breed gained popularity in the 40s and 50s, both in the United States and the United Kingdom, where it was dubbed the long-haired color point, and by 1961 it was recognized by all major U.S. cat associations. While they may sound like they were named for the mountain range, Himalayans are actually named for their color, which resembles that of a Himalayan rabbit. Their long, fluffy coat comes in all colors, with a strong contrast between body and point colors. Usually the body is a white or cream color, while the points can be anything from black to lilac to tortoiseshell. Large, round eyes give the Himalayan a sweet look and can be found in all shades of blue. Himalayans come in two different types that determine facial shape. The traditional or doll-faced shape has a classic look, whereas the ultra-typed or peak-faced Himalayan has a flatter, squished look, not unlike the Pekingese dog it was named after. Because of their long fur, Himalayans need to be brushed regularly. Fortunately, their gentle, sweet natures make it easy to settle them down for a grooming session, and many of them enjoy the attention. Docile and not at all aggressive, Himalayans are dependent upon their human companions, making them wonderful indoor pets. Look at this fluffy baby. Look at that. So fluffy. Who doesn't want a floof cat? I'm sorry, floof cats? Best cats. I say that about every cat that I see. It just happens to be whichever cat I'm around at the moment. Oh yeah, Homeward Bound. That was a Himalayan, wasn't it? I did not know. I forgot that Homeward Bound existed for 5 minutes. Oh man. Okay. Well, this was fun. I'm going to set up for the stream. And I will see you guys soon. For anybody who wants to join me for Hellblade. We'll be trying out Hellblade and seeing how that works out. I'm not sure if I can. I think I found a way to also do a stream on TikTok. So if I can do both, I'm not sure. I'm going to test it. I think I can run it through OBS and I can port it both through Discord and through TikTok. We'll see. And we'll figure out how we like it, or if it's laggy, if it's too bad, then we'll just turn off the TikTok one. But I'm gonna see about that. I'm making changes, guys. I said I was gonna do things ages ago. That is the difference. I'm gonna see what it kind of looks like right now, but I'm not sure what it's gonna... it depends. Hey! She just smacked the ring light. Anyway, we're gonna see what it looks like. I may just do Discord tonight, but I'm gonna try and iron out the specifics of it. I've been soundproofing this room. I've been doing research on how to... well, you'll see. I'm doing things. Things are being tried. You don't know until you try. And trying and failing is one step towards trying and succeeding. So we're doing things. It's an exciting time. Oh my god, we're doing so much stuff. I'm exhausted. Anyway, if you are new here, or if you're passing by and you like my voice and you want to hear me read you again, we do this every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central. We are going to be going through the entire book series, and if you wanted to go and watch the rest of Miss Peregrine's, they are all on my YouTube, link in the bio, and I am going to go stream video games. I would say you could find the Discord and go through that, but I'm going to see if I can just stream here. So we're just going to be moving to the laptop. It's just a different location. So we're going to see how that works out. Thank you all for joining me and Pond, apparently, who is real close to tipping over this ring light. She makes me so nervous. And I will see you again next week. Thank you guys.